on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
He didn't say it quite that nicely.
Right.
He really pushed my buttons and I was super annoyed, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to publish a book and we'll see what happens. And that's what happened, and I just never looked back.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers. No more barriers. No one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome. It's the Self-Publishing Show with me, James Blatch.
And me, Mark Dawson.
I'm going to make a concerted effort to look into the camera that actually films me. So if you're watching on YouTube, watching you. Because Catherine has given up telling me off for looking down here, which is where I can see you.
Yes.
I've got to be professional, Mark, even though I'm looking at a Sony lens.
Yeah, that's going to be confusing because now you're looking away from me and I don't know what I'm supposed to do. It's
all about the viewer. It's not about you and me.
That's true.
It's never been about you and me, Mark. There is no you and me. It's
okay.
Weird talking to this camera. Anyway, welcome to the show. Here we are again. I'm sort of in a slightly jubilant mood because it's Friday the 10th of February and I'm on the ground in Canada, or at least I will be when this goes out. This is a week. We're recording this about 10 days ahead. But I'm going to be in Canada for a week and a bit seeing my daughter. I am aching with every fibre of my body to hug my daughter. It's so hard when they leave home and betray everything you've given them. They just walk off into their adulthood. She's Leaving Home, that beautiful song by the Beatles, makes me cry now.
Yes.
Anyway, so that's what I'm doing. But we've got lots going on the SPF front, and we are going to talk about a few of those. First of all, I just want to say congratulations to Linda Sterling, one of our Patreon supporters who won the Ads for Authors course. She won it. She was selected from one of our gold level subscribers. You can join her and be in a draw for next time we open the Ads for Authors course. If you go along to patreon.com/self-publishing show. We appreciate it very much indeed. And we have a little surprise, which I'm going to tease you about for our top subscribers to be announced soon. Okay, we have also an announcement or two on the Self-Publishing Show live front, which is quite exciting. Mark, you can do the speaker announcement.
I can, yeah. So we're starting now out of as we record this, we're still in the middle of the Ads for Authors launch, so my focus is a little bit off that. But as soon as that's done, and I'm kind of starting to transition into the next things now, we are looking at the live show. So I'm starting to program it, and I've had quite a few people asking to speak. And I had an email about a month ago from an author I've never met, but have known for a little while. We've had email conversations now and again, and she's occasionally asked me for advice. I've occasionally asked her for her opinion on things. And she, I'm delighted to say, will be speaking at the show. And her name, for those who've been in the game as long as I have, will be well known because she sold millions of books. And she is currently doing exceptionally well in translation. So Germany, same as me, but she's also doing very well in France and Spain, which is not the same as me. So I'm looking forward to hearing what she's going to be saying at the conference. And her name is, I really haven't mentioned it yet, is Bella Andre. So Bella is multi-million selling romance author from the States who also has a place in London. And we've persuaded her to wander from West London to
she has a place in London. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. She lives in London for some of the year, and apparently the picture she just sent me a picture for the that we'll send out to everyone when we start to announce our speakers, and she said it was taken in her garden in London. And her garden looks enormous, and
right.
I used to live in London, so I know how expensive big gardens are. So it's either a garden or it could be an allotment.
Royal Park.
Well, yes, I'm not quite sure.
Park.
We'll certainly have to get to the bottom of that with Bella, but yeah, she's going to be great, and it's quite good really, because I remember when I started the first London book fair I was kind of aware of from a self-publishing perspective, which I didn't go to, had, I think, and I spoke to Darren at Amazon about this not too long ago, I think it had Hugh Howey, Bella Andre and Barbara Freethy, all in KDP t-shirts. There's a picture that I remember seeing on K-boards, and the three of them were on stage talking about self-publishing. And this could even be 10 years ago. So it'd be great to get Bella back on stage again to give us the benefit of her very long and successful experience. So really looking forward to that one.
Yeah, brilliant. It was a very early interview, I think, on the self-publishing show. And I can't
Number
remember.
2 or 3, I think. Yeah.
I remember it clearly because there was that moment I knew very little about indie publishing at that stage. And
some things don't change.
She told us that, about to release book 3, actually. How do you know? She told us that she was approached about selling one of her series to traditional publishers, and they came with this $35,000 offer, something like that. So she turned her spreadsheet.
It's more than that. I think it was 7 figures, and she turned it down.
Because if you're listening to the story, Dawson, I'm telling the story.
Sorry.
So they offered her $35,000, and she opened her laptop, turned it around, and showed how much she'd made, and they re-offered her $1 million.
Okay, and she turned that down as well.
She did turn that down. I think she did eventually do something with them, but that for me was like an indicator of the power shift that was going on in publishing, that obviously trad publishers were aware of, but they don't talk about very much. But I'm very excited about meeting Bella, and maybe we'll get invited to her garden. Maybe we'll get a barbecue invite or something.
Maybe. One other thing we can mention with regards to the show is we've had a few people ask us whether it's possible to do a payment plan for tickets, and it is. So we've put together, I think it's 4 payments of £50 each. Will get you pounds or dollars. Pounds.
Pounds. We sell the show in pounds. It's based in London. Yeah.
So 4 payments of £50 each once a month will get you up to June, or just before June. So that offer is available until the 28th of February is the last date that you would be able to make those 4 payments and still be in time for the show. So you can find that out at www.selfpublishingformula.com/SPS live. S Sierra Papa Sierra Lima Indigo India Violet Victor Echo. There we go. I've butchered that. I think I'm using kind of a police version and the army. So
yeah, anyway, it did change actually. I think sort of Second World War. Blue Peter comes from an old phonetic alphabet, an old children's program in the UK.
Yes.
So at some point it changed to this NATO standardized one. But anyway, I wish my children knew, probably before they knew other things they should know. They learnt the phonetic alphabet, the NATO alphabet.
That's very useful. I'm sure they're very grateful for that.
Yeah,
thanks,
sure
Dad.
Sure they are. Okay, good. Well, very exciting about the conference. I think now we've got this Ads for Authors launch out of the way, we will focus a bit more on the organisation. We've started that this morning, actually, in our internal meeting. We'll start to roll out some names, Bella Andre being a good headline name. But of course, we should say that Amazon will be there in force. And last time we had Amazon from around the world in the room and there to meet you. And that'll be the same for all the major players in the industry. So you'll be able to talk to Publish Drive and Drafted Digital and Reedsy, and all sorts of people are
Google
going to be a big part of it. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll announce all the sponsors who are definitely going to be there as we get closer to it. In fact, we'll probably feature as many as we can on the show leading up to it as well.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, that's all the SPS Live news we have for now. One final thing I want to tell you about is that we have a webinar coming up. If you attended our TikTok webinar to learn about using TikTok for authors, I have to apologize because we had the first time ever, we just could not get the software to work. It wouldn't settle down. We have had some inherent problems with GoToWebinar, the software that we used. And we had to abandon it. We just froze up, and it was embarrassing for 4 or 5 minutes talking through it live. But we had 750 people on the line out of, I think, 2,500 who registered for it. So a huge presence in webinar terms, and that was disappointing for everybody. But it's been rearranged. Thank you very much indeed to Lila Dubois and Jane Rylan. So it's now going to take place on the 27th of February at 9 p.m. UK. And guess what? We're going to have some new software to try. It'll be our first one using. We're going to move over to Zoom. So we had a call with them. At least we think we are. We're going to rigorously test it next week.
We've been using GoToWebinar for ages and ages, and it's always a bit of an adventure. I've never had the same amount of problems as you've had, but I have had moments where it's kind of like it's frozen and you kind of like this, and it's just a bit embarrassing really when you've got everyone who's turned up watch and listen to something and the software goes tits up. It is really frustrating. But anyway, I weirdly did a webinar with Rachel McLean, which was really good last night as we record this, and it was flawless. No issues at all. No lag, nothing, which is really just one of those things.
And presumably lots of people use GoToWebinar without problem every day. So I'm just giving you our unbiased, fair assessment of it. Other people have good experience of it.
You know, we've been thinking about moving for a little while because, you know, kind of if it happens once, that's too many times in my opinion. So I think given that Zoom has been battle tested, much more than GoToWebinar has. I mean, like, over the course of the pandemic, if that software doesn't work now, it's never ever going to work. So it's pretty easy to use. In fact, we're using it now as we
are using it now. Yeah,
as
although
we
I'm looking
record
at the camera. It's a very impressive company, Zoom, and we did congratulate them on their guerrilla marketing technique of unleashing that virus to
very impressive.
A million more users on. So they did very well with that. Yes, I should give you the URL if you want to sign up for that. It'll be out and operational by the time this podcast goes out. So if you go to selfpublishingformula.com/learn TikTok, all one word, you can sign up for that, and you're going to be instructed on how to use the power of TikTok to sell your books. It's a big hot topic at the moment in indie publishing. We also have a Facebook group, by the way, where we talk about this every day of the week. If you want to get involved in that, if you search TikTok for Authors. Is it called TikTok for Authors? I'll leave you to look that up while I'm chatting. The TikTok Authors group. And if you registered for the webinar initially, we will be emailing you but you will have to re-register, obviously, as we're using a different platform. Okay. I think it's called TikTok for Authors.
TikTok for Authors, yes. I think if you search that,
so
that should
Facebook groups /TikTok.
It's TikTok for Authors. That's it. FOR for Authors.
Yeah, good. Okay, right. Time to move on to our interviewee today, who you and I met in Vegas. Do you remember this night in Vegas, Mark? It wasn't too drunken.
No, I do remember. Yes, we went to the Cosmopolitan Hotel for Amazon kind of drinks reception, it's quite good actually. As we had a few beers, and I ended up talking to someone from Amazon in Seattle I hadn't met before, and actually going to go out and see them when the end of this month. I'll be in Vegas and then Seattle, so I'm going to go over to Seattle for a couple of days, and because they move so fast, Amazonians they don't stay in the job for very long sometimes. I mean, there's a few exceptions. A couple of people I can think of have been in the same job for years, but oftentimes they go from one to another quite quickly. So it'd be good to meet some new faces out there. And I'm sure Seattle will be gorgeous at this time of year. Balmy weather, no rain at all.
For it, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Can't wait.
That will be good. Okay. Well, anyway, we met. This person's not from Amazon, but Katharina Mora is actually a romance author. She is living in Hong Kong. So her husband, I think he's Dutch from memory, had moved out there. And I think it's quite difficult when you're the other half of somebody who gets moved for the job, because very often you can't work. You don't have that status. And so she wanted to do something, started romance writing, a lifelong obsession with her, just another person for whom indie publishing has unloaded and given us amazing opportunity. And she's killing it, as the kids say these days, doing really, really well. So I wanted to have a chat with her on the show. So here is Katharina.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
So, Katharina Mora, welcome to the Self-Publishing Show. I think you might be the first person we've had from Hong Kong.
Amazing. Thank you for having me.
We met in Vegas. I guess you flew that way to Vegas and I flew this way, and we met in the middle.
I did, yes.
Somewhere. And we're going to talk about you, your writing, the success you've had, the type of romance that you write. And I think we're always interested in each other's approach to writing. So we'll talk a bit about plotting and writing and physically how you do it and marketing and so on. So we've got all that to come ahead.
Right.
Why don't you start off by giving us an introduction to you and your writing career?
Right. Well, my name's Kat. I have been writing for about 2.5 years. And I started during the pandemic, like quite a lot of us actually. It kind of it's hard to say. It just was the perfect thing for me, and it worked out really well. But yes, no, I write semi-billionaire romance, and all of my books are really quite niche. They're all very angsty, fast-paced, and they tend to have recurring themes in it.
And we should say you've done incredibly well in a short space of time. USA #1?
Yes. Yeah. The last one hit #1 in the US, in a few other countries as well.
Yeah. So leading up to that, I mean, lots of people did start writing in lockdown, but had it been something you'd pursued on and off before?
Well, yes and no. So the story is actually that I've been writing all my life. When I was a kid, I really wanted to be a writer, but well, generally for people of my ethnic background, that's not a real career that you can pursue. So I became an accountant instead. And it was during that lockdown period that I was writing a lot more than usual because it's just a real coping mechanism for me. And my husband said to me, hey, you're doing this every single day. You're staying up so late writing and you're not doing a thing with all of these things that you write. Like, why don't you just publish one book, just one, just see what happens. You don't know, right? Just give it a try. But he didn't say it quite that nicely.
Right.
He really pushed my buttons and I was super annoyed. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to publish a book and we'll see what happens. And that's what happened. And I just never looked back.
Yeah, amazing. So you say you wanted to write as a little girl, but was it like family pressure and parents, just the expectation was that you would be going to a professional or something?
Yes, it was very much a expectation that I would attend uni, that I would do well, do better than my parents have done. And the best way, or like the easiest way to do that is to pursue a reliable career track rather than pursuing something that's a dream that not many of us get to live.
Yeah. Yeah. In fact, certainly before indie publishing, I'm thinking now as a parent, how would I have felt 15 years ago before indie and my daughter saying, I'm going to be a best-selling writer.
Yes.
It was like winning the lottery back then. Today it has opened up and made it more possible for us, which is a great thing. Can I ask where you were brought up? How long have you been in Hong Kong?
We've been here for 5 years, but I was born and raised in the Netherlands. I'm from Amsterdam. I'm Dutch.
Yes, I remember now. We had a chat over a beer, I think, at an
Yes.
Amazon. It's all coming back.
Yes.
Okay, so you're in Hong Kong, and I guess that's for work-related reasons.
It
Is
is.
that you or your
yes,
husband?
It was. Yes. My husband was relocated here. He actually works for a Dutch firm, but they opened an office here, so we relocated together.
Okay.
Which was actually the perfect time to start writing.
Yes, sounds perfect.
A
Yeah.
lot of things just really fall into place for me.
Yeah. So you turned your talents to writing, published that first book. Now tell me about that publishing experience. What did you do? How did you publish it?
This is the interesting part because I didn't know a thing. I was a very casual reader. I didn't know that like book groups existed. I had never heard of ARC readers or beta readers. I didn't even know BookBub was a thing. I just didn't know anything. All I knew was that I always used to read on KU. So I figured that's what I'll do. It seemed simple enough. It was uploading onto Amazon wasn't rocket science. It was just a couple of clicks. And I kind of just figured, okay, well, if this is just a personal challenge, let's just publish a book and see what happens. So I got a really cheap cover from Fiverr. Actually, that's still the cover on the book today because I just still love it. And I got my editing on Fiverr, and I just wrote a story. That was all it. Just uploaded onto Amazon. It was a really cheap project. And then I figured, hey, people are actually reading this. I hadn't advertised it. I hadn't really done anything. And I think the book in its first month made about $300. Obviously, for us right now, that's perhaps not considered a success. But back when I was like, hey, would anyone even read this at all? It was an indication that it wasn't the worst thing ever. So I kind of set out to think like, oh, okay, well, what knowledge do I need to make something out of this? Can I make it sell better? Is there potential? Could I do more? Can I write another book? Could this really be a thing? So the first thing I did, obviously, I went to Google because where else are you going to go if you're not from the community? I think I ended up on like a Reddit thread or something like that. and a self-publishing formula came up. I think there were 4 or 5 recommendations, and that was a very consistent one. And it was also one that had a really good refund. What do you call that?
Policy.
Policy. So I kind of figured, okay, well, what's the worst thing that can happen if it's really shit? I'll just get a refund. So I got that course, and at the time I was like, oh, okay, well, I can't really put all my money into this if I have no idea if it's going to pan out. So I got the 12-month payment plan. I'm trying to think back because it feels like a really long time ago. So I'm trying to think back to what I actually did. Yeah. So I know I got the course, and it opened up this community that I didn't realize existed. So I took the course. I'm very much into learning things, so the course was perfect for me. I took all of the modules. Look at me now. So I think something somewhere along the lines must have gone all right. So I took all the modules, and I started asking questions in the groups. And that's kind of how I learned that there were all of these components to publishing. But I would say that what I actually started with was just Facebook ads. And I did initially run them the way that they're taught with the self-publishing formula. I don't anymore, because as you grow and as your career grows, you learn new things, and your methods evolve to become uniquely yours. Yep. But the foundations of it definitely came from there. I think even some of my naming conventions and the way that I would set up some of my ads, I think a lot of that is still thanks to the foundation that I gained that way. Even the Amazon course is probably a lot of that. I still apply a lot of that today.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I went, like introduced to community, took an ads course, and then just figured things out step by step.
Yeah. Oh, it was amazing that your first book without any promotion at all made $300 in the first month, because that in itself is hard these days. I guess that was probably a coincidence with lockdown, and there was a huge uptake.
I think so. I think I got really lucky in that regard, and it happened to be a trope that is quite well loved. It was actually my debut novel was a Marriage of Convenience, which is my favorite trope to write.
Right.
So it was a trope that was quite hot. It was billionaire. I unintentionally hit a lot of universal fantasies with that book as well. So there were a few things that book had going for itself that were were not out of my control, but weren't intentional, and they just happened to work really well. It was I think luck, good timing, and then very swiftly taking action when I realized there was potential.
Yeah, and good writing.
Well,
I'm going to say that
was
because quite clearly that is a part of it.
It is for sure the worst book I've ever written.
Well, that's your first one's supposed to be, isn't it?
Yeah, I guess.
Unless you're Harper Lee. Now, the follow-up then, so you probably didn't plan it to be a series when you first wrote that. It's just was it a one-off?
It isn't a series. The second book was actually like I said, I didn't know a thing, so I was learning. So book 1 was written entirely from the female's point of view, and I started to get all of these emails saying they really wanted to know what the male point of view was and why. Some people were really mad I hadn't written his point of view, and I didn't even realize that that was something I could do, or I just was very clueless. So I was like, well, I can write it. Like, I don't know. Let's try that then. So I just wrote the second book, which was the same book, which started just a few years earlier. So it's like a companion novel. It wasn't really anything new. It was more of okay, well, there are people who actually want this. Let's just write it. But I believe, I think that's how it went. But I definitely made a lot of mistakes. I think it's insane just how many mistakes I made at the start.
Tell us what sort of mistakes you think you made.
Well, I'm pretty sure that my second book has had approximately 20 covers. It also has had several titles and about 100 different blurbs. I have tried 100 different ways to run ads, different placement methods, different advertising platforms. I think everything that could go wrong, I have done wrong once before. But I also think there's no better way to learn. So it doesn't really matter in the end.
If you don't make mistakes, you're not learning anything. They say, don't they? So that's you kind of bear that out. So you carried on writing. So just to clarify, book 2 was the same story from a different POV, or just a?
I'm trying to remember. I don't think that it was actually. I think I wanted to release that, but I think book 2 may have been what is now called Stolen Moments, because I think what happened is around that time I learned I was supposed to be writing series, or at least that's what I thought it meant. Turns out that's not true for me, but I thought, okay, to maximize my chances of success, it looks like maybe I should be writing a series. So that's what I tried doing. This was a trilogy featuring the same characters. It's actually one of my favorite stories still, but it just doesn't really sell well. So that's, I think I started writing that series, and somewhere along the lines, I was like, oh, if I keep getting emails about this other thing that people want, why don't I just write that too?
Yeah.
But it was more of a, I felt like I owed it to readers. It wasn't something I wanted to write. At that time, I hadn't yet learned I can just say no to reader demands. So at the time, I was like, oh, okay, well, it turns out I have to write this companion novel from his point of view. Shouldn't have thought, well, that's not true. It still makes money. It's fine. It's like, It doesn't really matter, but it may not have been the best use of my time.
Yeah. And that influence readers have on writers is a very indie thing, much, much more so than ever happened before with traditional. And actually, although you had a sort of negative experience there because it wasn't the book you really wanted to write, actually the fact that you wrote in a load of tropes that readers love and have pushed and almost created is, I think, very significant part of why indie is exploding at the moment, because readers get what they want quite a lot, and billionaire marriage and convenience.
Right? They get a connection with authors that you don't really get outside of the indie space, and that didn't exist, say, 5 to 10 years ago. You could never reach an author the way that you could now. You couldn't have a conversation with them. You couldn't send them a message or gush about their books and actually have them reply. And connection is quite a big part of my brand. I really do try to make sure readers get responses. I try to repost things, and I think that's really important.
What are your main
for many
channels?
Reasons, honestly.
Sorry, what are your main channels for contact?
TikTok is one that I actually manage entirely by myself. If you were to reach me on TikTok, it would always be me replying. And then there's Instagram, which is probably the second biggest, but generally I do have an assistant to make sure that no one gets missed out on. We separate all of my messages into ones I have to reply to myself and some that they can handle. And then there's my Facebook reader group, in which I'm quite active. That's also a combination of my assistants and myself. I think lately it's been a lot harder to reply to everything personally, but we're definitely still making sure that readers are getting responses.
How long have you been on TikTok?
5 months, 4 or 5 months, something like that.
Okay, so this year. And has that become an important part of your marketing?
Yes, absolutely. TikTok changed my career. I was very resistant to it because I don't actually like social media. I'm actually the biggest introvert ever. I don't even leave my house more than once a week. And I only do that because my husband goes crazy if I make him stay home all weekend. So if not for him, I would not even leave. So to be that connected is really not my thing. I don't enjoy it. I also don't necessarily enjoy being on camera or making a fool of myself. It's just not my thing. But I had a lot of friends who were doing really well, and they were like, hey, it's a real missed opportunity if you don't do this. So what actually happened is I was doing well enough with ads, and I felt like I didn't need anything else. But I also knew that I could potentially do better. And to do so, I would have to step out of what I already knew. I'd have to step out of my comfort zone. So I did go on TikTok eventually. So until that point, I had actually never even hit the top 100. I was already doing very well financially. and making a very solid full-time salary. But I wasn't hitting the top 100 or hitting any of the author milestones that indie authors find important. And at the start, I wasn't really bothered. But as your career progresses, you're like, okay, well, I'd like a new challenge. Would that be something I can do? And it turns out I couldn't with ads. Ads just don't have the reach they used to. And in my experience, it keeps getting worse. So I figured, let's try a new platform and see what happens. So I did, took a lot of advice from all my friends who were already doing really well, and just gave it a go. And the book that I started off with, it ended up hitting number 4 in the store within a few weeks of experimenting with TikTok.
Wow.
And obviously the one after that hit number 1. I also gained over 40,000 followers on TikTok in the last 4 or 5 months. I have quite an engaged readership there. So if I post something, they really do engage with content, and I'll have chats with them in the comment sections and stuff like that. So I would say it's been a far more important aspect of my job than I ever anticipated it becoming.
Yeah. I want to ask you a bit more about TikTok. I will just say, in defense of ads, I think you're right. It became more expensive, more difficult, more competitive. Lots more industry money, big corporation money was discovering social media ads and going in. But I honestly think that's changed in the last 6 months. And I think probably because of the global recession that's coming on now, I think it's been the first budget a lot of big businesses have slashed. So
marketing budgets are going to get cut.
Yeah, I'm getting 9 pence and 13 pence clicks again, which I haven't had for 2 or 3 years on Facebook. So I think it's now a very fertile time. But anyway, that's
I would say it's been a bit better. But yeah, no, it's not been bad. It's just I've never been able to do what I do now.
Yeah,
with just ads.
TikTok has been.
I think it's always maybe not even necessarily TikTok, but some form of organic engagement is always going to play a role. Whether we like it or not, ultimately you can't hit the biggest targets with just ads. Otherwise, everyone would be buying their way in. It's just not that simple. Unfortunately, otherwise I would not be on TikTok.
So you must have only just started TikTok then when we met in November in Vegas. You've only been on there.
I think by the time we met, I'd been on there for 3 months, 4 months, maybe.
And did you follow strategy on TikTok? Did you look at some other authors and see how they were doing it?
Yeah, so the reason I actually went on TikTok is because my best friend nagged until I gave in. She's amazing. She's extremely good at TikTok. She's like, you have to do this. You have to. And that went on for a few weeks. And I was like, do I really have to? And she's like, yes. You don't get to complain that you don't hit the top 100, but then also not be willing to put in the work that has resulted in me hitting those goals. And I was like, okay, that's fair. I'll do as you say. So I just followed her advice, and she was very much about like, hey, try this sound, try this type of content, try to evoke emotions, try this type of length, which at that time was working. It changes very, very quickly. But when I first started, I just did whatever she told me to do and then put my own twists on it. I'm very good at testing things and analyzing data. So all I really needed was a starting point from where I could optimize. And she gave me that, and I ran with it.
Yeah. And 40,000 followers later, it's a decent platform for you. So you found it as being something that gives you that reach. Let's go back to the writing a bit. So how many books do you have out now? How often are you writing a book?
I believe it's 10. I believe I've got 10. It's been tricky. I don't have, this year is going to be a lot more consistent, but in the time that, like from the time that I started writing to now, I have moved houses several times. I've moved back to Amsterdam and back to Hong Kong. And there's just been a lot privately going on that has disrupted my life. So that has resulted in my release schedule not being quite what I would have liked it to be. But I would say that I try for 4 books a year. If I do 3, I'm still happy. But if I want to really optimize what I can do organically, and I want to stay relevant, for lack of a better term, then once a quarter is what I aim for. But I'm definitely thinking about whether or not that's necessary anymore, and whether I need to be at the level I'm at, or if less would result in more peace and happiness.
Yeah, definitely a balance to consider. And another great thing about being indie, you haven't got a publisher telling you you're on a schedule that you've got to hit all these deadlines one after another. Okay, so the writing started off with Marriage of Convenience, Billionaire, Marriage of Convenience. What other tropes are you enjoying writing at the moment?
Marriage of Convenience and Arranged Marriage. So, well, the book that I hit number 4, it's called Bittersweet Memories. That was, in my opinion, the best book I've ever written, which is why I was so upset it didn't do well when it released, and why I was willing to go on TikTok, because I felt like if this was the best that book could do, that would break my heart. I just felt like that couldn't be it. So I loved that book so much that I was willing to do anything to increase the reach. And that was a very interesting story because it was an amnesia plotline. It was a forbidden romance, but it was quite, it's really hard to explain. It had a really long time span, so it followed the characters from when they were quite young. It had like rags to riches and back, and then back again. So it was a lot of character development, and it was, I would say that is like a very much a Katharina Mora book. But lately, the new series I'm writing, the book that I had number 1 as well, that was a arranged marriage, and that entire series is Arranged or Convenience. So that's going to be all of that, and then I'm basically combining that with other tropes that I love. So another one that's coming out next month is an office romance and arranged marriage. So it's kind of like all of the next ones are going to be 2 in 1.
So you love this forced proximity.
I really do.
Yeah, that's fun. It's always fun. I always think of what's the film with Kevin Kline and Meg Ryan, where they go to the vineyard in France. It's like the classic forced proximity rom-com, and I loved it. For French Kiss. There you go.
Oh, right. No, I actually have.
Oh, you have not watched French Kiss. You have to watch French Kiss. Okay. I notice you've got quite a few translations on there as well. Is it Germany seems to be a good market for you?
Yes, we've signed quite a lot, but they are not out yet. Germany, I do myself. Germany's indie. That's why that actually comes out at a decent pace. Germany is quite good for me. I think it's about 15% of my income.
Oh, it is. Wow, that's amazing. So you organise the translation, you do the marketing for Germany?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I just do Facebook ads for Germany. It's like, I think I have like an auto ad on Amazon and then some Facebook ads for Germany. Quite low budget because it's not that big of a market. And it did quite well. The German translations the last 2 hit the top 10. The very last one didn't because I didn't have time to do the marketing for it. But usually if I pay a lot of attention, it will probably hit the top 10 in Germany on release week. Most of them have, and the All-Star bonuses are great, so they earn out in the first month usually. Yeah.
And so you alluded to the fact that you've done some deals, some trad deals probably with your distribution outside of, was that outside of the US and UK maybe? Or?
Yeah, it was just translations.
Okay.
I have some other things in the work, but nothing I can disclose at this time.
So in terms of print, you do that yourself as well? That's indie published?
I do at the time, yes.
Yes, okay. All right, so what's the future for you then? So you said you've had a bit of disruption in your life. I don't want to pry there, but you're going to maybe balance and make sure that you've got that life balance right.
Well, that's a good question because obviously it's one I've been asking myself as well. I think what I would like to do most is less. I would like to do less.
Yeah.
So I have taken 2023 as a year to accept speaking engagements, to do the things that I think maybe I should, and then determine if they make me happy or not. So I would say this is a year of pushing as hard as I can and seeing how far I can get. And regardless of the outcome, I'm going to take it slow the year after. I think I'm going to probably take it down to 2 books a year. And just enjoy my life a bit more. I don't really think it's necessary to keep pushing this hard, because I don't see the point. What is the goal ultimately? You don't need that much to have a good life. It's one thing to hit career milestones and push for those, and obviously income comes with that. But you don't need that much to sustain yourself, or even to invest in your future, or in capital, or real estate. Like, you don't need that much. So I guess it's a year of figuring out what is next for me, how much I'm willing to do, and what that means. In short, I don't have an answer for you.
No, that's okay though, because I think that's such an important thing to try and come to terms with, that we don't always have to better everything we did before, because it's such a human, if you get to 5,000 in the chart and your next book is 6,000, it's human nature to be disappointed and to try harder and try and move forward. But actually, you've hit number 1 in the chart. And so...
Yeah, and it would be extremely unrealistic to assume that I could, for one, do it again, or do it for another couple of releases. I don't anticipate being able to do that. And I have always been in competition with myself up to a certain point. If I were to keep competing with myself now, I think it would become unhealthy. And I'm not willing to sacrifice my mental health for goals I have already reached.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm drawing the line now already.
Good. Sounds good. Okay, let's talk a little bit before we let you go. I guess it must be the afternoon in Hong Kong. You're ahead of us, aren't you?
It was 5 p.m. when we started. So...
yeah, 5:30 in the afternoon. Must be tea time soon. Let's just talk about your actual writing then. So how do you approach your writing? Do you plot your book out in advance? Do you just sit down and it falls out of you?
Right. Well, I am a hardcore pantser. If I know the story, I don't want to write it, because then it's boring. I have no interest. But I generally know, like, I have an idea of who the characters are and what their story will be. Like, I know how they interact. I'm very character driven. So I know kind of what they might do, some of the shenanigans they might get into. And the story kind of starts there, kind of know an inciting event. And then I just start writing. And then I figure it out as I go. And then I kind of pause along the way to make sure it's going in the right direction. I used to have to rewrite the book so many times because I would find out new information and I wasn't equipped to handle that, and I would have to start at the start. Now I can pretty much write a relatively clean draft and catch myself before it goes off the rails. I would say that, like, recognizing what my strengths are has helped in that. Like, I know that I'm very strongly futuristic. So I know that for me, imagining the plot is the same as writing it. And if I can do that before I sit down to write it, it saves me a lot of time. But ultimately, I mean, I tend to get myself into trouble with deadlines. I'm the worst when it comes to it. So I would say that when it comes to writing, I still have no idea what I'm doing.
Right, sounds like it's working. And also, what's interesting, you call yourself a hardcore pantser, but at the same time you said once you've got the story in your mind, then you can write it. So in a way, you are plotting it. You're just not physically plotting it. You're plotting it in your mind. Yes,
I would say that I plot about 10% at a time.
Yeah.
I always know what the next 5 chapters or so are going to be.
Yeah.
And then go from there.
In terms of writing itself, do you write in Scrivener or Word, or how do you do that?
Yeah,
and
I use Scrivener.
Where do you write?
Yeah, I use Scrivener. I have a really nice office that I use, but the chair I'm in right now is also a favorite.
That looks like an amazing chair.
It's really nice because it has a view of all of Hong Kong from here, which obviously you can't see, but it's a really, really nice location. So I kind of move along the house, from my bed to my office, to my dining table, to this chair, to the sofa. Because every time I move, it feels fresh. And then I get to write a little bit more and push myself a little bit harder.
Yeah.
That's kind of how it goes. Sometimes I'll try to narrate some of the story if my wrist is too painful. And generally, there's always going to be a point where I'm in so much trouble. I have to write 10K a day to even meet my deadline.
Wow.
But we've kind of established that this is how I work, and it tends to work out. It's not very good for me, but it is what it is.
No, 10K a day is a lot. I mean, that's what's your average on a normal day when things are going okay?
If I have like a good day, it's probably 5 to 6K. If I'm writing without any pressure at all, it would be 3 a day.
And do you write in do you give yourself regular breaks? Do you sit there and write for 2 hours at a time, or do you write in 30-minute sprints? Or
I don't really do sprints. It's hard to say because I don't think there's any logic to anything I do. I think I just kind of sit down and decide that by the time the day is over, I need to have X amount of words. And then I get distracted. I'll write 1,000 words, I get distracted. And then I'm like, oh, okay, whoops, an hour passed. Maybe I should do some work. And then I'll try for another 1,000 words. And then my husband comes home and he's like, you haven't finished your words, have you? I'm like, no. So then this goes on until it's 3 a.m. and I finally finish my words. And I'm like, okay, I need to be better. And I never improve. So
seems like a bit of a taskmaster, your husband. Do you check
Yeah,
he's finished his work?
He's really good at so I'm quite chaotic, but he is the most disciplined person I have ever met. And he's also a mathematician. It's just super annoying in so many ways. But he's very good at motivating me and reminding me what I promised myself I would do. And sometimes he's like, oh, okay, well, you always figure it out. So I guess
opposites attract, Katharina, which sounds like another trope for you at some point.
Hey, I mean, I could give that a try. I don't think that's one I've written before.
The mathematician. Okay, well, look, it's been brilliant talking to you. I honestly, sincerely wish you luck in getting the life balance right, and you're absolutely right. Why are we doing this? We have to step back and ask ourselves that question all the time. And the wonderful thing about not working in a 9-to-5 or having a boss or working even in trad publishing, whether you're on a contract, is we can make those decisions, although you have got your fans who are, I guess, your bosses in many ways. But yeah, so we can find you on TikTok. What's your handle there?
At Katharina Mora.
Katharina Mora, and it's Katharina with an H in the middle of it. Obviously, we can see your books all over Amazon, and yeah, good luck. Are you staying in Hong Kong, you think, for the foreseeable now?
Yes, it's going to take a lot to get me to move away from here.
You like Hong Kong?
I love it here, and I barely pay any taxes.
Yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, that's like a very good reason to move to Hong Kong.
Yeah. It would cost me a lot to move away from here, so I have no intention of doing that.
And if people, you talked about potentially doing some speaking engagements, where would people, have you accepted any yet?
Yes, but I think the only one that I can actually disclose right now is InkersCon.
Okay, you're going to speak at InkersCon, Alexandra Torres.
Yes, I don't think anything else. That's the one I know has been signed, and I will definitely be there.
Yeah.
The rest, I don't think I can disclose just yet.
Okay. All right, Katharina, what fun talking to you. It was great to meet you in Vegas. Thank you so much indeed for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, we wish you luck in all the different fields in the future.
Thank you, and I wish you the same.
This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
There you go, Katharina Mara talking to us from Hong Kong. I think our first guest from Hong Kong. I really, really want to go there at some point, but I don't know when that's going to happen. We need to go to the East one day, Mark, don't we?
I've been to Hong Kong a long time ago. Yeah. Very
You probably won't do what I'll do, which is to climb the hill to the old board that used to be the Kai Tak Airport chasing board that they would bank onto, which is still there on the hill, apparently.
I wouldn't do that.
I'm going to bring you up there.
I'm not boring. But anyway, yes.
That's a great thing to do. Yes, maybe we'll go down south to Australia, New Zealand at some point. We're talking about it enough, we'll organise it. Okay, look, I think that's it. We've got lots packed into today. Thank you very much indeed to Katharina, and of course to John and Catherine and Stuart and John again, and Tom, and everybody in the background. I hope I haven't missed anyone who helped this podcast become a reality every week. All that remains for me to say is a goodbye from him.
And a goodbye from me. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishingshow. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with The Self-Publishing Show.